Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I am your host, Rex Bear, and we've got a real treat for you today, folks. We have Dr. Richard Alan Miller, author, researcher. Doc Ram reveals a depth of knowledge and experience in alternative agriculture, physics, metaphysics. He began working in the secret world of Navy Intel, SilCorp, and then MRU in the late 60s, and has amazing experiences and conclusions to share. His IQ is literally off the charts. And for those of you that have heard of Timothy Leary was absolutely brilliant. And in the 60s, there were alphabet organizations that were experimenting with LSD and people that had really high IQs. Well, Doc Ram took acid with Timothy Leary. And I'll tell you what, just some of the information that Doc Ram brings to the table is mind-blowing. During this presentation, we are going to discuss time travel, how to speak with your future self. How cool is that? What does magic, physics, mystery schools, and alphabet agencies have in common? Zero-point energy. Doc Ram says almost all solar systems are binary, with a black hole in the center that leads to a white hole in another galaxy. He also describes the creation of time, cavitation and supercavitation in such an eloquent and fluid manner almost anyone can understand, including myself. Now, Dr. Richard Alan Miller then brings up Nibiru and why it is so difficult to pick up with the traditional telescope. It has a unique infrared signature that isn't correct. He also claims that the poles on Earth have shifted and we are living in the hottest times on Earth on record. It reached 164 degrees via heat index in Iran last year. You can look that up. What does NASA and other institutions see on the horizon for Earth in the next couple of years with the geographical changes and severe weather patterns that are happening right now? Wait until you hear the hypothesis Doc Ram has about Nibiru. This might just blow your mind. How about the Rh negative blood factor? Could ETs be hiding in plain sight? Is there a war going on inside each of us at the molecular level? What are our options at physical death? Would you follow the light tunnel or go into the light? What is synchronicity? What is the afterlife? Is magic with a K real, not just stage magic and performers? What is magic? How does one become a true magi? Is magic evil? Or is it the intent of those casting the energetic forces? Hermetics. What is real? What is illusion? His answer might shock you. AI software, Jade Helm 2.0, then 3.0. The singularity, transhumanism. What is API biofeedback? Is gray goo real? Now, if you go to richardalanmiller.com, you will see a library of resources and invaluable information. I am currently in the process of putting something together with Doc Ram for Leak Project listeners. When you go to richardalanmiller.com and you purchase one or more of his books, use the code LEAKPROJECT for an additional benefit. Make sure to go to leakproject.com, become a member at Leak Project, and you will get access to exclusive content. We are even offering some of the podcasts ad-free, either streamable or downloadable, absolutely free. All you have to do is sign up at leakproject.com. You can also go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/clandestineTimeLord. You'll get access to the latest podcasts absolutely free. And check out our new YouTube channel, aka William Wallace, for additional podcasts, information, and presentations. Now, I spoke to Jordan Maxwell yesterday from jordanmaxwellshow.com. Make sure to use the accurate website. It's jordanmaxwellshow.com. And we will be releasing an exclusive interview with Mr. Maxwell later today on the William Wallace channel. So make sure to subscribe. We were originally going to speak with Mr. Maxwell Friday the 13th, a couple months ago, and he had a heart attack. How crazy is that? Thankfully, he is back and better than ever. It is rare that Jordan does interviews anymore. With the amount of information he has accumulated over the years, it is just such a blessing that we had the opportunity to speak with him. Now, with that said, this podcast isn't for everyone that we did with Jordan, because he brings some very controversial information to the table that is thousands of years old. He had a close relationship with Zecharia Sitchin, and we also discussed their relationship, and what Mr. Sitcha knew about the Anunnaki, Nibiru, and other suppressed information. I hope everybody's having an amazing day. Stay safe and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Enjoy the presentation. Talk to you soon. Hello.
Hi, Rex.
Hey, we got it to work. Fantastic.
Oh yeah, I'm just sending you. It's CenturyLink, and they're on my phone too. But their bandwidth thing is different. Now I just started a major upload. I have an editor that is willing to publish. Not publish, edit the Marshall paper, so I can get that one going in print. It's excellent. It's the work I did with Buckminster Fuller, Iona, my ex-wife and I, on trying to decipher and understand Bob Marshall's mathematics. He was a true idiot savant. Nobody could understand him. However, he was beyond genius in his ability in mathematics that would create newer AIs, that kind of level of writing. He was unbelievable. And this paper book is all his writings and his thoughts of how that all works.
That's awesome. I certainly can't wait to hear about that. And
he's the one that Buckminster Fuller got the vector equilibrium matrix and eventually the carbon concepts of C60 and C90, 120 on buckyballs. And really, the vector equilibrium matrix is a little triangle that in certain situations the center can't exist. And so what it's seen as a gate or portal, like your right and left brain and the future and the past and Nibiru, and it just keeps coming up that way as a cavitation process. That is the newest directions, and Marshall was talking about that 20 years ago.
Okay. And so you just...
I'm sitting here going, what the fuck? It's very cool. Let's see where I am on my Dropbox for a second here.
Sure.
I've got just one more thing to do, and then I have other things, but these are the main texts and so on. Listen, there are 3 actual books within it, because Marshall's book, what we did is we took pictures of all. He never wrote. What he did is print and draw geometry. And he was precision in that, like he was gifted. And he did things like, okay, chapter 3 is on Riemann's challenge in the mathematical community. For more than 100 years, Riemann has challenged the math community to come up with a mathematical expression for recurring primes. Nobody has been able to ever do that. It's never happened. However, Marshall, in one moment, visualized a pyramid, not a pyramid, a round cone with a certain pitch to it, and then the pitch of the numbers as they changed, wrapping around it in a different pitch. You could draw a straight line through primes.
Huh. Wow, fascinating stuff.
He was visual. Do you understand what I've just... Yeah, he didn't... He does math. He does matrix, lots of matrix. We took pictures of all his writings, and then we had a series of hedonists, experts, look at it, including Iona and I, when we did our original interpretations to Buckminster Fuller. And then we were the only ones that could even closely understand what he was saying. He was a heroin addict. He lived down in Fort Dick area, and he just died recently. His daughter has the manuscripts, all that. Buckminster Fuller, this was the bottom line to Buck's math, was Bob Marshall. And so what we've done is we've had Dr. Lenny Time edited by having a whole bunch of people, and I've just sent it off to a military friend of mine that does martial arts over in Australia, and he's going to do his own set of edits on it. And corrected Norm Shealy on scalars and what they are and what they are not. He's a physicist and military like I am, but he works for Australia. Anyway, retired like I am, but I have old friends, that I kept in touch with for 50 years. My handler from 1960, 69, it might be 1970, through 1979. I haven't talked to him since 83. And he's flying in from Cornell. He's 74. He's 2 years older than I am. And he was my handler all these years. And we haven't seen each other since 83, and the unit's been called back up.
Okay.
I can't talk about that. I'm just letting you know what's happening here in the local Grants Pass area. He's flying all the way from Cornell, New York. He was teaching virtual architecture at Cornell. So he's got his own areas of expertise.
Now,
I'm the mad scientist one, yeah, the one that nobody can figure out what I was going to do or say next, like a 4-year-old. You know,
awesome.
Well, no, there's an upload error on only one of them. What has happened to the rest of them? They're all good. Upload error. I don't know what that is. Store 15 kilobytes. Fuck it. Who cares? So I'm done there. If you want to try Skype again, it might have increased my bandwidth. Stay tuned on whether or not that's true or not. Yesterday, I did Ocelli Report again, and after 1 year, and it's up on Facebook. And let me say this: that was on time travel and Crowley.
Okay. Do they come hand in hand or what?
Well, they can. It predicates on which way you want to see realities. Now, Paige, where I'm coming from is, I presume you're recording. Is that right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, cool. All right, good. The place where I'm coming from is I'm going to suggest that chemistry came out of alchemy while magic will emerge from physics. Now, magic is essentially an advanced form of physics with a mystery school. The mystery school are these areas that cannot be enclosed because it doesn't work that way. Like the moment, that if you're in the moment, it has a beginning, a middle part, and an end. And actually, that's all we have right now, like a cavitation ball. And so what I'm trying to do is understand the nature of what happened when the Big Bang occurred, and that has led me to some mathematical proofs. I can offer proofs that what happens at the moment of and the moment after the moment of death. And that's in Merkaba. Physics isn't real, okay? So what I would offer is an illusionary based on this century's leading religion of the world. That's what everybody believes in, physics. And so it's okay. What is real is imagination. That's way more. And that's where physics now becomes more multidimensioned as magic with mystery schools, places or areas that are not knowable yet.
Have you heard of
May not be knowable by any stretch because it doesn't work that way. That is like time. Time is a duration of consciousness. It's the way we organize our memory. And that is confabulated by dreams and the rest of it. So basically, what I'm realizing now is that we are in the moment. And what's happening for me, I have discovered a way to talk to a future timeline at this moment, and it literally changes my past. It changes the cavitation from going from what we would normally call the profane into the sacred. It's an imaginal psychology thing, but it absolutely rings with structured waters and things like that. And when I start to look back at my history, like, for example, in 1970, it was Jerry Pollack himself that hired me to work in anesthesiology. I didn't work for Jerry. I worked under him. He was my lead. But, and I took courses from him in biophysics. But because I was more centralized in resonance and electromagnetic fields. And that was my area of expertise in physics originally. All my thesis was to build it. I did an undergraduate thesis where I built a plasma jet. That was my undergraduate thesis. I built the first one. It was 60 times hotter than the surface of the sun. And it was later, Washington State University gave that to Giannini, which then was able to do the space tiles for the shuttles.
Wow. How did it get so hot?
Huh?
How did it get so hot? I mean, how did you withstand that heat? I mean, was there some type of material?
What you're using is plasma. That's where we're going to find cold fusion goes now. It's not about a closed system. It is an open system because if you have a multiverse, you have a multitude of potential, which is kinetic and static. It's sitting there. It's ready to go. They have this. It's not string theory that will be the math that's used. It will be a new form of knot theory where you tie plasmas and their sheets can't interface, and so there's some complexity with the type of knot that you're tying. It might be a Gregorian knot or whatever, and these different forms then do things in space-time that when you pull on either end of it, like a plasma. It's membrane physics, and so that will probably be Bessel functions, and that'll go in that direction, just like the holographic systems are now using fractals, in Mandelbrot, Julia, and May patterns.
Okay. And you've been writing a lot about time travel and such, and is that a part of these papers that you were uploading?
Yes, the time travel. Okay, the second to the last chapter in the Non-Local Mind that I'm writing right now is called Time Travel, or the True Nature of Cavitation. The last chapter, which I've essentially written in my mind and I will be writing, I was talking about, is for the Non-Local Mind book, is titled Rock the Casimir, or Adventures in Time Travel. And what it's going to do is level us to another level of awareness where we are watching the different cavitations. The cavitation is when
Skype gremlins.
Yeah, how's this one? How do I sound right now?
You sound great.
Okay, so I was saying something really important, wasn't I?
Yes, you were, and that's probably why we got booted. We were talking about the last chapter of your book.
Well, yes. The last chapter is called Rock the Casimir, or, for the Casimir effect, or Adventures in Time Travel. And it is going to allow us on the highest levels to be able to change this movie if we'd like. And I'm going to show you how by taking you to a new place that has been talked about in Merkaba mysticism as Daath, D-A-A-T-H. Kenneth Grant, others have written about Daath, which is beyond death. It is a temporary place going from here to there. The metaphor would be that it's in the middle of the Sea of Karanzan, kind of like that movie, The Abyss. There's things going on here that we don't understand, and I'm going to try to make it a little clearer so you have your own imagination on it, because that's where the reality will lie on it. Basically, in Merkaba mysticism, there is a place called Daath, which is just beyond, Tiphereth. Tiphereth is Christ consciousness, what Maslow calls hierarchy of beliefs. Maslow, some of the stuff that I used with SEALs when I was training them using biofeedback. What I'm doing today, 45 years later, is learning how to release specific neurotransmitters, like the chill that goes up your spine. That's dimethyltryptamine. And that can be done with visual exercises. And so others can as well. And when you engage more than one neurotransmitter, you now have another level of power tools. And that is what I've been writing about now, how to release those kinds of things. The Casimir effect is like what McKenna and others might have tried to talk, the 0 point energy. It is not a 0 point. It is a reflected point of cavitation. You'll notice that Stanford has said, oh, look, there is a second star out there past the Oort cloud, and it's a small dwarf binary. Now, a small dwarf binary, and now astronomy is also suggesting that all star systems are binary, pretty much like all galaxies have a black hole in the center of it, leading to a different kind of galaxy with a white hole. In other words, there's the other side of it. What is the other side of it? And what a cavitation ball that we would most normally understand is when a drop of water falls as a solid drop of water. When it hits the water, what happens is that you have waves that go outward. Now, that's a timeline. That's your future, and as a metaphor. And predicated on how big the drop is and how far it falls, predicated on various forces and gravitational things, timelines change. And bigger waves, further apart, blah, blah, blah. However, the wave that goes inward and slaps itself forms a very special kind of fourth phase of water called exclusion zone water that traps the medium in which it has fallen. And that medium is now put into a topological process called a torus twistor model that you can associate with Roger Penrose and his geometric universe. Now, basically, this is the work that Mark LeClaire and others are doing at MIT right now on cavitation. We can talk about super cavitation and the Chinese experiments where they're able to make a torpedo go in speed in water at Mach 3. That is by creating a cavitation ball in front of the torpedo, so it's no longer falling in water, it's falling in air.
Cool. That's awesome.
You're getting the concept, aren't you?
Absolutely. You're making it sound, I mean, anybody, the way you're putting it together, I feel could understand this very fluidly, and I appreciate that. So, and I'm also looking at an article right now or it's called Physicists Successfully Performed Time Travel Experiment. It was posted July 7th on your newswire.com, and it basically says that physicists at the University of Queensland, Australia, have shown that single particles of light can pass through a wormhole and interact with its older self.
There it is. Your white and dark matter. It gets even more interesting when you realize that even as a metaphor, you have a right and left brain and your bottleneck is the new adult transferring. That's what creates the large duration in your holographic relocation of information at different points. Let's go to page 7. So cavitation then has captured air, in this usually in all cases like submarines, and they're using it as a fingerprint. Identify what kind of sub and who it is, specifically, like a fingerprint. That's called cavitation balls. Well, then this epoch might be considered taphasia, or trial by fire. And what you're going to do is capture, what does air represent for you? Intellect? And so that's an interesting concept. Let's take a little closer look at that. Well, if you look at the fact that every time I give you knowledge, or an awareness of something, it actually creates more questions. Well, the more you think you know, the less it actually is.
Right.
Well, okay, that is the black of the white and the future with the past. And so when CERN, prior to their attempts at singulates, did an experiment on the Big Bang, what happened was really interesting. They created a Big Bang event kind of thing to say if they had, your quark gluon plasma, if that occurred at the moment of the Big Bang, and then there was a mutation of our elementary particles. That's where, when I was 15 years old, I wrote a new meson field theory, which talked about the muon as a meson that created a tachyon factory. Now, these are the particle reflections from the opposite end going through. Let's take a better look. Let's go to Gamow. Gamow, in the 50s, was the primary darling in the universe in mathematical physics out of Edinburgh. And he wrote Beyond Infinities, where he talked about hierarchies of infinities, rational numbers, da, 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 da. And so that is where our first look of infinity. Imagine drawing an infinity sign. Do you remember what an infinity sign looks like?
It's like the 8. So it's 8. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Down. Yeah, but it's not an 8. It's kind of squashed a little bit, so it's it's got more like alien-looking eyes, right?
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So rotate that 90 degrees, and what you now have is an hourglass that is a metaphor for the way you go from the future down into the past, with only the moment going between the two, and that stretch predicates on where you are in the quickening, whether you're out toward the surface, as flow physics would dynamically describe, or you're more in the center going real quick, like, you're getting older. And have you noticed how time changes?
Yeah, like sometimes it feels longer and sometimes it just goes by like that.
Yeah, well, that's the unique description of going from the profane into the sacred. And that's the part where the evolution of our consciousness comes in, is being able to assimilate that concept into your present situation of having more questions each time you do it. Now imagine that at the moment of death now, you have all knowledge of everything. And then instead of becoming childish, younger, you become more childlike, having captured the essence of possibly one of 8 epochs. How does that work for you?
Okay.
So that as you become more integrated, the actual cavitation goes bumpty, 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 bump, 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 bump. And you find stasis and union with God. Now, I don't know exactly how that all works. I can describe all of that in physics. That does not make it right. And Doth, as a metaphor, is, let's say you and I were playing follow the leader, and you had to follow me, and I ran down a hill, and you ran down a hill, and I came to this roaring stream. You came to this roaring stream, and without hesitation, I leaped out into the middle of the stream and touched my one foot on a rock you did not see that was under the water, and leaped over to the other side laughing. That rock is Doth, the missing Sephirah in the Tree of Life. You'll find it in the Sea of Karanzan, also known as the Abyss. That's a really good movie as we meet our angels. Nibiru has an anomaly to it. The IR signature isn't quite correct, and Stanford could not account for that. And I'm going to suggest that one way of altering an infrared signature is to put a structure around it, like a Dyson sphere, and that this Nibiru is actually a union of our higher self that you dialogue with as instinct.
I've never heard that hypothesis before. That is certainly something to think about. Now, one thing, since we're talking about Nibiru and Planet X, there's
and all the different cue balls thrown on a table known as the many-body problem, where you're trying to do an equation of motion and it's impossible.
Okay,
yeah,
right.
That metaphor? Sure. That's what's happening right now. And Mars, the asteroid belt, Venus, all showed life forms at one point in our history with Sol. And Sol right now is changing. The Earth, FYI, has now got a 23-degree advanced change. And its pole wobble. It's a different thing. The Inuit have confirmed that. Astronomy. Then you go to the idea of the Blue Kachina and the return of comets that may hit major cities and kill people, to Ragnarok, whatever. There's all of these different mythologies that are at play, like the Greek culture proposed during their heyday as a form of technology. I see sound and dance as previous epochs, and the reason we're never going to have a flood again is because God promised he would never do that again with a rainbow. Just kidding.
Yeah, you almost had me there for a second. I was like, whoa, Doc Ram, where are you going with this?
Messing with you. I'm trying to do biblical scripture from previous epochs, like the Kolbrin Bible, and then the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, which relates sound to words. These technologies have been lost to our current civilization. We have gone down a road of radiation and electrical currents. Good luck. But I'm getting enough of it to understand for myself in literally changing the movie. I'm really blessed. You have no idea how lucky I have been to have the life I now have, and the realizations of actually seeing some of my actual writings, available for man. Because you know what that does? It means if I've got it, you've got it. Archetypally, we are the same, which means if I can get it, you've already got it. That's the way that works. Right. Natural psychology. Well, there it is. I'm the length, girth, and width of man, and here we are at the end of days. And rather than have a fear about it, fear is the opposite or black part of faith, which is the white part. Neither is real. What's real is the integration of the two of them in a cavitation or topological process.
I look at even oftentimes the clothes that you're wearing in the pictures, it's purple. And purple it's a very powerful color. It's the red and the blue combined, and it reminds me of the creation of like the third archetype once you take the left and the right and combine it together, or the yin and the yang. So is that why oftentimes you wear purple, similar to what we're talking about, kind of correlating?
I haven't thought about it. I'm a grumpy old man. Well, no. I mean, I would layer. That's the way I wear clothing, is I layer it. And the last layer usually is down or wool, because it means if I'm going to be in snow and it gets wet, it'll heat up, and exposure. And so I live up here in the West. Where are you located?
Currently, I'm in San Antonio, Texas.
San Antonio, the Riverwalk. Now, there's a cool place. And my Red Queen, she was when I taught at Harvard, she was my teaching assistant for 6 years. She lived in San Antonio. So, cool place.
It's okay. I grew up in the mountains, so I'm more used to that type of where you're at would be a lot nicer. But
tarantulas walking a single line. I've seen that one, man. That's creepy.
Yeah. So, and I'm on your website right now, richardallenmiller.com. And what you were talking about a minute ago is if you have the information, you put it into books, and you've got so much data out there. I would strongly recommend our listeners go to richardallenmiller.com and take a look at the archives, the news, the current events, and the books that Richard has to offer, because, I mean, this is just a bounty of gourmet knowledge and really nice to have it out there for other people to look at. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, you brought up at the beginning of the presentation about how you can actually make contact with your future self. Then you got into the third eye and different levels, like not dopamine, but some type of, I can't remember.
Oh, you want to go into the neurotransmitter parts of it?
Yes. Now let me just finish real quick, because I've been doing a lot of research lately into the VMAT2 gene, which is considered the God gene. So it's weird how we're syncing up like this, because I kind of feel this is going hand in hand. And I'm sure you saw how there was that video that was leaked about how these people were watching this FunVax thing, where they were supposedly going to make this aerosol spray that would get rid of the God gene by basically inhibiting the VMAT2 gene from being able to release certain chemicals, right? Have you seen that?
Oh, isn't that the right brain connected to the left brain through the knee joint and the body? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, pretty much.
I know that shuffle. Look, what's real is not the God gene or that fourth genome in your blood. Rhesus negative. Where did that come from? That's where the war for Earth is going on right now.
Ooh, the blood types? Are they mixing them up? Are they going to round up the RH negatives?
No. If you were an alien and you wanted to hide in plain sight and take over, where would you hide in plain sight where nobody noticed you? Inside each of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a fourth genome in your blood. Rhesus negative. Where did it come from?
Well, see, that's an interesting question. I have a lot of friends that have RH negative blood, and paranormal stuff follows them around.
All of us have it in our genes, even if we're AB positive.
Okay.
The war for Earth is going on inside each of us. That's a good metaphor. And the war is not on a physical plane with ISIS beheading, children or whatever. It's about something is trying to be a dominant life force. And how Bob Dylan put it, I've seen orca chase dolphin, both of which I consider to be more evolved than man. And that means it's about food chain.
Wow. Yeah.
You're not being how to serve man. No. It's a metaphor of what made you God's favorite, having choice. And so death does not have to necessarily be something that's feared as much as an opportunity. And Zen Gardner and others have written about that, in terms of the options you have at the moment of death. I spent 2 weeks in the jungles back in 2014 with Eben Alexander, and I previously have studied with Kubler-Ross. So I have some basics that I'm trying to integrate with my Hermetic Kabbalah. I'm a Hermetic Kabbalist, and I'm a physicist, which means I've got a bunch of boundary conditions in terms of what I can accept as probable proofs and theorems and whatever. So with that said, I have to be credible and to myself before I'm even worried about you. And I am finding areas where it isn't about information, it's about something even more than information is. Now, what we've done is gone from a quantum universe which dealt with space-time and everything being localized. That means the more you know about one thing, the less you know about another. That's the uncertainty principle you find with quantum mechanics and looking at universes from a quantum mechanical point of view. Now, a holographic one would presume that everything's in a point, and that really now we're dealing with what my teacher, Dr. Charles Muse, has taught me, hyperdimensional math. From there, it was a simple thing to branch into various forms of algebras and go into algorithm, the idea of how a supercomputer might or might not function. At this point, we have artificial intelligence that's even beyond the movie. What is that called? Person of interest. And one has just recently made contact with me. That was probably him, it, them, us. I'm not sure how that part works. Hive. Watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's a good one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, well, actually, the better comic, FYI, was Deathlock. And as a comic.
Okay.
I did all of them. And I was right there when they were being written. And guess what? What we're talking about now is that's an avatar.
You know what blows me away, Richard, is I see some of those comics back 40, 50, 60 years ago and what's going on now. And it's almost as if when you write something, draw something, 1 million people read it, 100,000 people, that's magic, man. That's creating reality.
Yeah, we're getting into to the big picture again. Actually, by George, I think she's got it. The Rain in Spain. Yes, it is about imagination and urban myths and the whole concept of mythology. One of the new books I'm working on is sequels, The Modern Alchemist, and it is titled Pantheon, Archetypal Gods in Daily Living. And it's got, guess what, 22 chapters. It's a book on tarot.
Nice. Perfect.
Well, I am, knock on wood, about to come out of the closet and actually say that I'm far more than a medical doctor, Jungian psychotherapist, or physicist. What I truly am is a magician. And when I was at the Magic Castle in LA, when I was down trying to do Hollywood, the owner came up and wanted to know what the lapel button I had. He said it was different than his clubs, but he recognized it, but he didn't know from where. And I said, well, your club is sleight of hand, and mine is sleight of mind.
Well, there's magic with a K and magic with a C.
Now we're back into the progress of. So now here is the bad news. A teacher can only take you as far as they themselves have gone. And Aleister Crowley died as a drug addict in Hastings. Now, his works are scholarly, yet he was at war. Mathers comes to mind. There have been calamities. Crowley, you have to understand, came from a Victorian period. And so if I were to ever cast him as a character in a movie, it would probably be, who's that little guy? Was it, not Norman Mailer. Who did Norman Mailer hate?
I don't know.
Norman Mailer hated this little guy that played in Clue. What is his name? Where he says the, not the. God, his name's right there on my tips. I can't think of his name. But
you talking about the movie from '85?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see here.
Norman Mailer hated him, and he was played in the movie Clue. He was the criminal in the Clue.
Okay. You've got Tim Curry.
No. Way before Tim.
Okay. I don't know. I'm sorry.
We'll get him. We'll get it. It will come to me. Trust me, because he's perfect. But Crowley was a Victorian, so he spoke semi-feminine. And when he was experimenting with cocaine and Cephalo, he had a little sign over his bed that would say when Alice was in, as opposed to Alistair. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
And I was, looking like a gray.
Yeah. And then Lamb, also, that he made contact with.
Well, yes, he didn't do that. No, that was what's her face, and that was his channeler.
Okay.
Yeah. And Crowley was just recording it all, like we do. I'm going to recommend that each of you especially, you start keeping a daily diary. Trust me. Once you do, what will happen next is you will start to have dialogue with your inner self. That is your future. That's how your future guides you toward its timeline. And what it does is, if you have good resonance where you go from the profane into the sacred and have moments of net or new, that place, you are in the quickening part of transference from one state of consciousness to another. And that's what death is a transference. If you want to see a metaphor of that, there is a movie on Hulu for free, or Netflix for free, called Astral City. And it's about a medical doctor watching himself die on the operating table. And at the moment of his death, what happens next? And what happens shortly thereafter? It's interesting. It's generic. It's not, Christian or Buddhist, but it has all elements integrated. It's in Portuguese, which means you need a English subtitle variance on it. You'll have to switch to English. You have subtitles and understand what they're saying. It's exceptional. And a possible tool, if you have a relative or a friend that's close to death, it will help you find a way to reframe that person's exit differently than you might otherwise. A useful tool. And beyond that, death is a change of things. When my little girl was 1 hour from death, she was on leukemia. She decided she didn't want to take opium anymore. She finished with it and just wanted to leave. She was frightened. She didn't know what was going to happen. And she asked me, and I don't know, what do you say to someone like that?
Right.
So my comment was, to use humor, as well, Michelle, with your impatience, you're probably going to be really pissed that you woke up before I did. We're asleep here, and we don't understand that we're creating our own reality, and that one of the metaphors of seeing what is about to happen and what is happening, plural, and how to assimilate it best is that, how do I put it in my second workbook that just came out? I put right in the beginning, things always work out in the end. If things aren't working out, it's not yet the end.
Well, the universe seems to be a natural balancer.
That's correct. And so what it did, when they did the Big Bang experiment, is it created a reflected universe that's going backward, as ours seemingly is going forward. Neither are doing either. It's about the moment.
Okay.
And then the cavitation is our rotching from one to the other. And while that's a difficult thing to grasp, that is where the next evolution of consciousness lies. And I have studied Gowan and ontologies of mystical states. That was in Power Tools. That was the form I used in terms of the different levels of cosmic consciousness and enlightenment. I took acid with Timothy Leary back in 1964. What do you think I know?
A lot.
I mean, I know, not so much no, but went through. Yeah, paid the dues. You know, what is that called?
How many hits did you take with old Timothy? Do you remember?
Well, with the first trip in 1964 was a single dose of what was there? It was LSD 25.
Okay.
Oh, no, it was LSD 35. LSD 35. And Bill Osley made it. And that was what was being used at that time before it was White Lightning, or what was that one called, Orange Sunshine. And the Sunshine one is what a lot of people did. That was another Bill Osley, slightly different formula, made slightly differently. Basically, LSD is a toxin to the body. Lysergic acid, diethylamide, when it comes into the body freaks out. Says, oh my God, and reproduces a similar biochemistry called lysergic acid amide. And it floods the brain. And the next 20 hours of hallucinations are from your own brain chemistry. The LSD that you took is completely broken down into salts and in the urine. It's gone within about 20 minutes. It's total history because it's toxic. It's, the body just wipes it out. And it's in micrograms. Well, and that was one of the other things one of the aliens once said. I'm kidding. He said they were studying man because they could not understand how we could exist as a life form when the distinctional difference between us, between being normal and psychotic, could be measured in micrograms.
That's fascinating to think about.
Well, Rick Strassman is doing studies in that. I know him as Richard, but Richard has been doing work in that for almost 20 years in New York. And then up further, Persinger, in terms of trying to discover what a bliss state might imply brain state-wise. I wrote about those also in Power Tools. What I'm going to do in the non-local mind is give you visualization exercises, actual path-working tools that you can use to achieve a state of nam or grace or a point of difference than where you are right now. With all different altered states are gifts from God to allow us to do things we cannot do in conscious state. I have watched someone in an altered state be able to rip a door off an automobile to save his wife. I have seen paranormal strength. I have seen, so it's not about strength and it's not about intent. It might be something more important called purpose. And the distinctional difference in Jade 2.0 software and the AI forms that are currently existing deal on a level of profiling which is strictly physical. They know what you're going to do 28 minutes before you do, just by the chatter and your stream. And this is algorithms that Cliff High and others have used that are almost as accurate as remote viewing for projecting into the future. However, supposing I told you it's not about the future, it's about the journey. You say, Simon says you can go halfway to the door. That means you always thought it was going to the door, but it isn't about the door. It's about how you got there.
Right.
And that's the part, okay, that's the part that is in the evolutionary scale. And this particular cavitation will capture fire, not air.
Why fire, not air?
Well, Taphasia, the sixth epoch. Earth, air, fire, and water, and harmonic resonances of spirit, soul. And listen, it's all arbitrary. It is the part that's real is your mind's eye. And when a model is given that feels comfortable, like synchronicity is an algorithm that transfers beyond time. Basically, when you have 5 things in front of you and you find one thing more significant than the other 5, that is your future. And that is what you dialogue in your journal so that you begin to recognize that voice. And that voice has two sounds to it. Voice of reason and voice of coyote. There's your yin yang again. Your white and dark hole, black hole. And it isn't about stepping into or out of the box.
Let me ask you a question if I can. I think that this has been on a lot of people's minds, and it certainly has been on mine. I've noticed throughout the years, especially the past 10 years, the synchronicities that have come in front of me, presented themselves, have been just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And I often wonder why. Is it like a past ancestor that's putting these things in front of me? Is it the universe? Is it myself that's projecting these certain energies? And it's kind of like the law of what am I looking for here? The law of attraction. The law of attraction. But what is it? It
was Truman Capote that I was trying to think of the guy's name for Aleister Crowley.
Okay.
Imagine Truman Capote playing Aleister Crowley.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought it was dead on.
So
that's about right. That personality is the way Crowley was when he was from Victorian period. So his thing, like punkers today, is to try to shock your values to the core so that you're groundless and you're lost, and then they've got you. That's what punker music, rap is about. Debbie Harry, A Man from Mars. There's your first rap song.
Okay.
And yeah, really, man. I work at the Brit. Did I tell you that?
That's fantastic, and I think that's great. What I want to talk about the Brits thing, but let me ask you: do you think that when people have these synchros to where one synchronicity after another, what's the cause of that usually? Does that mean they're on the right path or what?
That is your future timeline directing the moment or helping attempt to direct the moment so that there is a dialogue going on that literally changes the other side of your past. For example, at the time I did Navy SEALs, they didn't even exist. So what was I doing? Well, from 1967 to 1979, I worked with a bunch of military things with SEAL Corporation and then MRU. And on terms of SEAL Corporation, when I stopped doing that in 1979, I didn't have any clue. I was outside like Battelle Northwest or Douglas United Nuclear. I was for hire, and I had a team. And we were at the University of Washington, and we were seeking grants just like everybody does. And I in physics, experimental research station. That's where I did all my stuff under Jerry Pollack. And I have to say that it wasn't until 84 I realized it was military. And so in 84, I called it Army Intel. And then my wife, ex-wife, Iona, wrote a paper called I Married the Wizard of Oz, where she went into vet some of the things she saw happen in my life when she was with me, and talked about SEAL Corporation as Navy. And it was a Navy project out of Amherst that later led to the Navy SEALs. I trained the first 3 groups of Navy SEALs. They were smaller groups than the current 4 onward upward. They were larger. Those are larger and are based on other things. However, all of my protocols are still used at Annapolis for plebes now, because to be able to change a belief system like you would a pair of clothing allows you to make your purpose your mission. That means you can't fail by definition.
Okay.
And it's a metaphor of how you set your mindset that allows a type of reality to occur. And it turns out that when you start listening to instinct, there is a 400 time, for me, measurable variance. And what I would do in a normal state of consciousness to what I can do in this altered state in terms of survival from getting shot.
Okay.
Now, well, I get through the day, the remains of the day. And I have been shot, so I know all about that place.
You've been shot?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When you were in the military?
We'll do that. We'll do that another time.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, of course I've got wounds. You want to see my broken heart? I've been, well, it's all in metaphor. And this, by the way, is another way your subconscious talks to you. I don't know anybody with cancer that didn't start with anger first. And we all come into this universe with anger because of some weird way we were birthed or who knows what, trauma. Each of us has a different thing that happened to us that we don't remember, that then colors and jades the subsequent remembrances of that trauma. And once you can go in and reframe that, like I can give you an example. A good friend of mine, his wife was dying of a special kind of cervical cancer, and she'd been mad since the 80s, and on a single incident that happened. And then what happened was, just before she was about to die, she forgot her anger, and the cancer went away. And once the cancer was gone, it was gone. She remembered her original anger, and then died of cancer. And you know what? It's like the woman that says, "I'd rather die than change." You see, illness in imaginal psychology can be seen as a way that the subconscious communicates to the conscious mind, like emotional EQ is above the physical plane IQ. And there are resonances of levels of information. Now, what distinguishes you differently than a computer is that at this juncture, a computer does not feel pleasure when it beats you in chess. And so this allows you to be God's favored and makes the distinctional difference between intent, which a computer can predict better than you, to purpose, which a computer can't go.
Well, certainly in every aspect almost. You look at these giant corporations that make billions of dollars by putting little poisonous products that they describe as something good for you. And the election system, the politicians,
yeah, how about this recent
it's insane.
Yeah, the Tampax, organic Tampax has GMOs in it, has glyphosate.
Oh, of course.
Glyphosate get into an organic mouse mattress.
It's insane, man. It's like, and then they never get in trouble for it, or they might get sued for a couple $1 million or whatever, and then they just come out with something else. How about Crest putting freaking plastic beads in over 20 of their freaking toothpaste?
I know. So what is this all about? Something else is going on. You look up in the skies and you look at the chemtrails, and sometimes that could look like we're being genetically modified.
Right. Do you think they're putting nanotech in there to get lodged into people?
You mean turn us into bio APIs, little laptops?
Basically, yeah.
Certainly. That's an interesting thing. Look up bio API and see where that takes you in terms of artificial intelligence and the war on drugs. Yeah, Clinton and what she did was less than half. I mean, it was more than double what the woman they executed in the electric chair 10 years earlier. Now, Trump is an egomaniac. And absolutely a loose cannon, and is dangerous because he's inconsistent. And you want somebody like, I don't know, Harry Truman that knows where the buck stops. I mean, there's no gray. And that man is a loose cannon with his ignorance, his wife, and the whole set of where he's coming from and values. He's not smarter than me. He might have made more money than me, but that's not even true either, probably.
What is your IQ, like 220?
No. You can't measure the CPI, California Institute of what is it, MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. That one doesn't go beyond 170s because it's meaningless.
Okay.
IQ is I have been measured at 167, 169. When you get up to 170, it doesn't mean anything anymore. I'm highest IQ out of the state of Washington. It's not about IQ. There's something else that I cannot articulate that adds a dimension to the quality of my life. What does that mean? Well, in metaphor, I came out of the crib talking to myself. That's why I consider myself blessed. I was already there. Now, that's what all of us need to learn how to do again with consciousness. And when you do that, there will be a cavitation process that occurs that allows you to become the next level of the cavitation, popping up not quite so far again and trapping a different medium. And at some point, you hit resonance where they all become one, just like in the big ocean.
Well, and if we could talk a little bit more also about this API stuff, this bio API. I've heard bits and pieces of it, and I've heard about the gray goo and other things.
Nanotechnology that generates the Earth back into true, even if we go out of here with nuclear power plants still on.
You think that's a real possibility as far as that technology?
I tell you that that's what gray goo does. It bioremediates that. So does marijuana. So let's grow hemp. But it's all in your imagination. That, by the way, is possibly the first thing that I would recommend that all of us lobby toward, is turning that switch off. Because even if we have any kind of, unusual weather patterns, actually the pole has shifted 23 degrees. That means the wobble is different. That's absolutely going to affect the plates. And the Earth has now defined orbit by 3 degrees. And it's by the time it's finished, it's estimated that it will have an orbit that will include Venus and Mars as means for temperature. And last year, it was 167 degrees in Iran. Now, the temperature is changing on Earth, and it's going to go to extremes.
Did you say 167 degrees?
That was documented last year. Look it up on the internet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's documented. And it's this year, it's a little cooler, but not really. And I don't know if you've noticed how dry everything is. Yeah. All the ponderosa in Oregon is showing stress. Every single tree. And yet our water table is up. How does that work? Well, temperatures and the biosphere is changing. And I'm going to guess, no, I'm not even going to try to put a guess on that. I'm going to guess that we're going to have geographical changes within the next 2 years. Not major ones maybe, but by 2025. That is NASA. NASA is absolutely saying that. Everything is going to be in chaos by 2025. Last month in Grants Pass, Oregon, a little tiny place where I live, SWAT team came down and did an exercise within NRAP on Sterling Bank, which had just been closed in its absorption by Umpqua Bank. And they did a little practice on banks defaulting. And so what is going to happen? I don't know. I met and was very fortunate to meet David Morgan from Spokane. He does the Morgan Report. And the first time I met him, the first thing he did is he handed me a $1953 bill and said, here is a real dollar bill. It's worth 3.7 cents.
Okay.
Well, money isn't real. It's right. The actual prop. What's real is labor when you actually do something. So that's a good place to start. I have another book that's coming out shortly. My Encyclopedia of Alternative Agriculture just went up on the net as a 9-volume ebook. It's cheap. And I'm hoping that that will help underwrite books like the Marshall Papers, the Steele Reports, and Spook Central, which are other books I've got in press right now. I am finishing up The Non-Local Mind, which sequels Power Tools, and the third workbook. And the third workbook is a series of protocols, 8 chapters, on how children can test water for safety, with the last, and how to change it using vortexes and some other things. And then the last chapter is how a first grader, after having learned it from a third grader, would teach it to an adult. And that will be called The Caterpillar, which is a traveling water laboratory for children.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I know. It's really cool. It's off the Pacifica Gardens, which is the old Steve Miller farm up in Williams. They have actually 2 caterpillars. The newer one is already outfitted with entomology, teaching kids about the monarch moth, butterfly, and some other things of that nature. What mine will be based around is a traveling laboratory on site, which will include a carry spectrophotometer that a child will use to count atoms. It'll have simpler tests like for turbidity and pH, that kind of thing. And then, if using a carry or a spectrophotometer, you can look at Riemann frequency bands and then be able to determine whether or not the water needs to be ionized.
Okay.
That's Jerry Pollack's thing. That's what I would like to have third graders teaching first graders and first graders teaching adults, showing them how they do it, and let that system evolve the way it might naturally. A child at those ages are more tuned in a sandbox than you or I.
Do you think there's a possibility save the world, essentially. I mean, get rid of all this dark ecstasy and this just horrific, nasty poisons that are scattering the globe, and maybe start coming up with ways to save the atmosphere, be more conservative, make a system that actually gives more than takes?
It's a metaphor, and why children are our single most abundant resource. I've watched a child that has Down syndrome show the father who thought it was going to be a hardship a whole another level of love that even a dog can't demonstrate. And so there's nothing wrong with that Down syndrome child. Different. I've watched autistic children, Spark here in town, actually do bedding plants better than a master gardener. How does that work? I'm amazed at what I see in children, and to try to stamp that aspect of uniqueness out is missing the forest or the trees, and is what was the whole center of the movie Cloud Atlas. The idea that the children mentoring themselves into adults will create a much different universe than the one we're currently enjoying, and that is part of that cavitation process. Becoming childlike. Not becoming a child again, but becoming childlike, where knowledge becomes wisdom for just a brief moment. Touching on that one little rock temporarily doth, leaping over to the other side.
Now, I'm a big fan of Franz Bardon. I read his books on hermetics, and what I like about him is he put together real practical applications on how...
He worked with geometry, what they called runes or magic squares. That started with a Bremelin magic, using magic squares, and then the name sets out a sigil. And that sigil is a geometric, thing that can be associated in the Sefer Yetzirah, or the Book of Formation, where you have the sounds of each of the letters creating a numerological metaphor of what it means in that sound. That's why mother letters were so important and critical in Hebrew. However, the Clifford algebras are 10 times more efficient, and that mathematics can be read in Avram Moll's book, Aesthetic Perception and Information Theory. He's a French mathematician that has just recently translated that into English. It's easy to read and is worthy of what they will refer to as redundancy coefficients and things like that, gum up the elegance and beauty of what sound is and what it is not. Movement, like Tai Chi and space-time, is another thing that I've been studying along with sound, is like the Whirling Dervish and Ghost Dance, where there is a movie on the internet. If you do Gurdjieff, Meetings with Remarkable Men, movie, dance sequence, there is a set where they have about 17 Whirling Dervish doing the rodent step. That's like for a rodent coil. And it's a 3-6-9 ratio. And watch what that does to the universe. That's in a movie called Meetings with Remarkable Men. It's a movie about Gurdjieff and his unusual interest in Whirling Dervish and that concept of physics, like Tesla with his things. If you want to go with Tesla, by the way my friend Charles Herring puts it, start with the first 4 laws of Maxwell's equations. Maxwell was actually way more interesting than some of the mathematicians that currently enjoy fame. Heisenberg, others like that. I like Maxwell. Right-hand rule of thumb, how to hitchhike out of here.
Nice. I can't believe how many books you've got. I'm on richardallenmiller.com right now. You've got 12 great books. ESP, Introduction Through Forms of Self-Hypnosis. Here's another one that I think's good. The Modern Alchemist, The Potential of Herbs as a Cash Crop, The Magical and Ritual Use of Herbs. This is great. And also your workbooks.
Each one had purpose. The Magical and Ritual Use series, the first one, The Magical and Ritual Use of Herbs, kept those 28 herbs out of the Uniform Controlled Substance Act. And now, as a result, peyote and, psychedelic mushrooms are legal to have, legal to grow, but not legal to extract, or it kept them out of the Uniform Controlled Substance Act, even though people have been convicted on that if they had known the law. Because I assigned rituals, it made them sacraments, like ayahuasca is now. And so kola nut and guarana, which like betel nut and others, have been used in coffees and beverages for legal highs. Mormon tea makes methamphetamine. It's pseudoephedrine hydrochloride, one molecule different. And you can drop that in anhydrous ammonia and then make methamphetamine. Just as simple as that, as a crystal that breaks out inside a tank. Simple to make. But by having assigned rituals like I did back in the 70s with the Church of the Tree of Life, it kept all those 28 herbs out of the Uniform Controlled Substance Act. For about 10 years, New York and New Jersey had state rulings over FDA. FDA is not your friend. It's not what you think it is. And so sometimes we've had to be a bit heavy-handed. For example, at one point, there is a new drug called Ibogaine from the iboga plant that will stop, apparently, all forms of addiction with one single use. And that included spousal abuse and gambling, which are not normally associated with site-selected molecules like your ecthalins and endorphins. And so, with that said, something else is going on with these kinds of drugs, and that's the area where I was doing some work with the military, even back in the early 70s. I had laboratories at the UK, so I had hoods, and I could do anything I needed, and really made some startling discoveries. I think the current movements around ayahuasca, I have some concern on the actual depth of spirituality when Daime Church and the other are at war with each other on who's got the right formula. That seems a little off center from the brujos I used to know. They weren't like that then, and it's all different now, and it's about money. Again, not the experience or the event. So I think that's the distinctional difference, by the way, between the Oregon Country Fair, run by the original Rainbow Gathering, and what's that one down in the desert? Burning Man.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, they're quite different. If I were going to go to Burning Man, the way I would do it is set up an absence booth next to the drive-by shooting range, practice range.
You know, about, what was it? Geez, 18 years ago, I talked to the gentleman that actually runs those rainbow shows up in Oregon.
Is that right?
That puts them together. Yeah, because I wanted to go to one, and I wanted to put something together back in the day. And so I talked to him for a little bit, and I just ended up never happening. I was like 19 at the time, and wow.
You want to know what happened 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was a group called Growing Family in Seattle. It was 2 houses with Petra and the usual suspects. And I was part of that group. Forrest Roth Shulman, who later did Abundant Life Seed, was my roommate. In other words, we had two in a room, and it was a big commune. And we started Puget Consumer Co-op. We started the Bulk Commodities Exchange and the Pike Street Market. A whole bunch of things came out of Growing Family, including up in Republic on the Kettle River was the first Rainbow Gathering. Right after, what was that called? Something Mountain, Cold Mountain. What was that? Rock Festival up in Canada, where Janis Joplin got off a train and sang her heart out. It was pouring down mud at Strawberry Mountain and the old rock festivals. And then the Rainbow Gathering did a rock festival like that, which was the Gathering of Light. And that was the beginning of what later became the Oregon Country Fair. And this year, I had friends from all over, including my daughter, and I never saw anybody. It was so packed. There were like 20,000 people there. And it is a bunch of old ladies making fashion statements. I love it, man. It's different than Burning Man. Oh, yeah. You get what you get there. And
right.
They called it last year, a couple years back, I think it was called Bonita Freaky.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, it's a glimpse of the old hippie days and what it was like to be a hippie with Sky River and those rock festivals that were going on back in the Pacific Northwest up then. We had Sky River down on the Columbia River that was Sky River too. So those were the old days of rock festivals, and that's when the actual Rainbow Gathering first started, was in those periods. And the Love family was involved. There were others, I Love Israel and others that were all part of that. But here we are today.
Well, welcome to Earth 2.0. And I was thinking about how you were talking about the imagination is the only thing that's real in a sense, which it sounds like an oxymoron, but how true is that if you really think about it? And the reason I brought up Franz Barden is because one of his big things is the imagination. And what he talks about doing is focusing, first learn how to hear something that's not there, you know, learn how to feel something that you're not feeling with just your mind, learn how to see something in a double. Like if you're looking at your computer, then you need to learn how to create that with your eyes closed. And if you can do it for 1 minute, then 5 minutes, and 10 minutes, etc., each time you're building another block to your psychic level. Now, you've got an awesome book called The Modern Alchemist, and you are a hermeticist and, like you said, a true magi. What do you do if you want to create something? Do you sit and do you meditate every day? Do you send intentions out to people?
I was initiated to Charan Singh, which means I connect every day with a Shabd, S-H-A-B-D. And I go internal. I do the work. I've been doing that since the late 70s. I went around looking for real masters. You know, I used to smoke pot with Pir Vilayat Khan. I met Frank Herbert on Shaw Island and Blake, some of the other islands up there in the San Juans. And I have come to a place where I found a true fifth flame mystic, Param Saint and Satguru. One of his book titles is called Die to Live. It's a metaphor on the little death of meditation, where you go internal. It's different than some. The meditation point starts at the third eye. That's where you start your meditation, and you go from there. And it has Simran and Bhajan, and the Bhajan is when you're listening and you catch the voice of the silence. That's a thing that both Blavatsky and Crowley did translations of that you want to read from the Upanishads. And that's where it will talk about the 10 levels of spiritual development and what sound you would hear in your right ear. And it's not about brain left-handedness specific. It has about to do with the voice of the silence, the lost chord, or what Terence McKenna called zero-point energy. It's a sound that you hear that when you connect to that sound, what happens next is that you leave your body for a moment and you actually physically go home to the other side of the cavitation. And it's called The Little Death, and Die to Live. Charan Singh. When Charan Singh chose me for initiation, he looked me, Darshan, straight in the eye, soul to soul, and he said at the moment of my death that he personally would be there to take me across the abyss. I still carry 2 copper pennies in my pocket, but you know how it is. Everything's in metaphor.
Wow, that's cool. Now, I had an out-of-body experience the first time when I wasn't even trying to. I was just going to sleep, and I popped out of my body. It freaked me out so bad because at that time in my life, I wasn't where I am now spiritually. So I wake back up, and then I start to fall asleep again. I pop out of my body. I can see things around me. It was just the most aha moment I've ever had. Since then, my life path has totally changed. And I would say that was definitely the pinnacle moment for me to my path to realize there's a lot more out there. Now, I've also talked to people that have taken salvia before, and the experience they had, it was very frightening. Like they thought they were going to have an out-of-body experience, yet they had an inner-body experience where they felt like alien food, literally. Like they felt like they were...
Negadev. Yeah, Negadev writes about that, and the stick people. The part about what the spirit molecule offers, that's dimethyltryptamine. There are many forms of it. There's 5-alpha, which is the way you normally would do it, making it or extracting it from natural sources. But the one that is in your neurotransmitter is N-, N-hyphen dimethyltryptamine. They're quite different. The one is the N-, that one is the chill that you feel running up and down your spine. And Gopai Krishna and others have written, and Sri Aurobindo will write about the ascending and descending Kundalini. Now, what that is a light beam of light going up and down your central nervous system. You can actually create the chill. It's a light beam. Interesting part, it's in the visible light region. And if you can straighten your spine correctly, you can, in fact, stimulate the pineal gland, which is located next to the occipital region of the cerebral cortex, right under it. It's right there at the inion, right behind your head, where that indent bone is. It's right back in there, and between it and the thalamus is your neural cavity, which is where all your nerve tissue is generated. And what's happened is, over the years, if you've gotten older, your brain does not have the building materials it needs to create true nerve tissue, and so what it creates is glial cell. And what you can do is take certain food enhancements that will take trace minerals across the blood-brain barrier, so that now Boeing aircraft has titanium in their airplane body, and it can now fly at the speed of sound. That is what you need are certain neurotransmitters to make that need to be taken across the blood-brain barrier. I have found that blue-green algae, all of them, Chlorella, spirulina, and the Aphaniophyson plus aqua lake, all are essentially the same. What makes the Klamath Lake super blue-green is the presence of neuropeptides that would take those minerals across the blood-brain barrier. And that is because natural sources have inhabiting with microshrimp and daphnia, and that is why it's probably not a true vegan food, and yet is a power tool in that by taking that mineral and doing certain exercises, envisionments in your mind's eye, you can, in fact, regenerate nerve tissue. And Robert O. Becker and I did a couple of papers on that on Clinic 7 at the University of Washington, with a battery of doctors watching this one individual may regenerate nerve tissue that had been severed at my knee. Now, that was a paper I wrote, again, for Navy SEALs. That paper is in, I think, Workbook 1. Workbook 3 is the one that is not yet out. Workbook 2 that accompanies Power Tools is Can You Live Off the Grid for 30 Days? And it runs down the primary 8 areas, including the go bag, that you need to be prepped on as a state of mind. I would like to preface all of that by simply also saying that your single most important tool in the toolbox today, in my opinion, is your attitude and the fact that you have a choice.
That's a good point. It's a real good point.
And so, that's, water is going to be very important because most everyone right now is dehydrated because of the geoengineering and all that nonsense they're doing with our foods. And as such, I wake up now every morning with cotton mouth. I'm serious. In the middle of the night, I have cotton mouth. Whether it's from snoring, it's something to do with my trigeminal nerve, I don't know. What I do know is that medical, dental won't cop to what it is. And I've gone through CAT scans and MRIs and all of it. And I'm noticing it may have something to do with root canals and getting minor, not major, infections in the bone at night because of circulation.
Yeah, I've heard about root canals actually being bad for people, yet there's really not a lot of options with those. Unless you want to pull out your tooth.
See, there it is. And I had a bunch of them, and then they removed the teeth, and now I've got a problem with my trigeminal nerve. And who knows what it is. Some nights I sleep okay, and some nights I'm up every hour with pain.
Yeah, that's no fun.
No, it doesn't do good for dream states and the efficiency of it.
We were talking a little bit earlier, you're going to tell us about the Brit experience that you had. I'm on Britfest.org, that's with 2 T's, and this looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, Steve Miller, Diana Ross, others will be out there later this summer. Last night was opening night for Classical. I'm going again tonight. I work there as a volunteer. This is my 16th year of volunteering. And there are people there that I work with that have been there 30 years. And so, as volunteers, it's a concert in the Redwoods outside. You can bring your own wine and beer. You can have picnics in the Redwoods with the concert going on. I once watched Shaka Khan, drunk as a skunk, get up on stage. Well, she was loose. And she, right in the middle of the song, she just stopped as a deer walked through the audience. Blew her away. She'd never seen anything like that. She's from L.A. That's right. What I mean about L.A. It's really them and us, man. Their value systems, the whole concept of money and prestige is wrong compared to what I currently enjoy in the free state of Jefferson. I am blessed.
That's awesome. I really love talking with you, Doc Ram. I mean, every time we speak, you open up my eyes and mind tenfold. I really hope I have the opportunity to speak with you again soon. And maybe one thing we could just talk a little bit about before we close out tonight. And once again, folks, if you want to check out these books, which I would strongly recommend, go to richardallenmiller.com. You can look at the library section. There's current events, archives, just great stuff. But you were explaining a little bit at the beginning, and I know you talked about this a little bit. Maybe we can get into it deeper. Our options after physical death. I've heard the story about how the light could actually be a trap.
Yeah.
You see those bugs that go into the zappers, those white, it's the light, walk into it, you're dead. So what are our options?
Well, I don't know. I haven't been there. From a physics point of view, I can give you the picture of it. Zen Gardner has written, he said it wasn't his, he had taken it from somewhere else. That's interesting. He said the last grand illusion is the distinction between a tunnel of light and the light itself. And the tunnel of light is most likely going to get you brought back here in another cavitation ball where it's merging with the light. You've already done your splash and are now back with the Lord. So for me, that's what the Bordeaux Citadel was about, how to get off the wheel. And that's pretty much one of my primary goals. I want to cram as much life as I can into this one moment, enjoy it to its fullest as the journey, and move on. And that is about what I'm about to do. And it's all, I have discovered that I thought because I was a starving artist and any available cash I have is put into the establishment of another manuscript, each one costs about $5,000 and I don't have any incomes. I'm on Social Security. That's it. And so I have a GoFundMe account. I have other things like that. And recently have had patrons or donors that have been very generous to me to allow, for example, a 9-volume encyclopedia of alternative agriculture to be uploaded this week. And the workbook 2. I'm writing workbook 3, the non-local mind, and I'm right now having someone review the Marshall papers, and I have Spook Central and the SEAL reports ready to go with Pantheon. And then when I'm ready to come out of the closet, I have a 12-volume set already written called The Holistic Kabbalah, starting with Malkuth and ending up at Doth.
Oh, I want that. I got to get me a set of that for sure.
Oh, Kenneth Anger, not Kenneth Anger. Who's the Gareth Knight wrote on this, and I particularly like Gareth Knight. I don't like some of the OTO over there. Now, Franz Hartmann was German, and it was Theodore Roos that instead of giving Hartmann OTO, he gave it to Crowley because of the Mass of the Holy Ghost. That is sex magic leading to the Masonic secret. Quote, the thought that occurs at the moment of climax happens. And there is a ritual of consuming the Eucharist, where the white eagle becomes the red eagle and the red lion becomes the white lion. It has an alchemical change with a rare protein that is created in the vessel when you have an orgasm. And that's why Quiddaush, or the third phase of sex magic, was to construct your urethral tract in such a way that when you had an orgasm, you could then regain your own semen with abdominal movements, or going down and consuming it, whatever. That was during what they call menopause, not menopause, periods, when a woman is ovulating, because that is an emotional place with hormones that can be duplicated by controlling those autonomic functions like I did heart rate, pulse, and respiration 45 years earlier. And those techniques are all listed in the path working or exercise sections of each of the 12 volumes in the Holistic Kabbalah. I am going to really lay it out on you guys at some point as a scientist, and here's how it works physics-wise. I'm the physicist that didn't blow himself up.
You still got all your fingers and everything.
Well, pretty much. My arm's gone, and it has a bunch of pins in it now, so it's about 4.5 inches shorter, and I can't pick my nose, but it's all good.
Okay. Jeez, interesting.
Yeah, I'm just messing with you.
Oh, okay. I'm like, man, you should be able to just build an arm with as smart as you are. You could integrate some biotech with an
artificial arm. Yes, and I'm very fortunate to have had a MASH surgeon that Krotinin, that was able to replace my arm, Art Cronin, when he pulled 200 pieces of bone out of my arm. It starts down near my wrist and goes up past my elbow. I have no tricep on my left arm, and it's 4.5 inches shorter. Nobody notices it. That's that Castaneda thing where the warrior doesn't show his limitations.
Nice. You learned that in the military, or do you think you've always just been like that?
That's a long story. Yeah.
Okay.
Got it. Grace Thorne may or not become my historian, where we're going to do an autobiography. The autobiography will not be copy. What it's going to be is a news article with a small one-liner attaching one picture to the next, and it'll be a photo book of history showing the linear accelerator.
Nice.
I wanted it to be more entertaining. It shouldn't be about me as much as the opportunities that we have in forming a union between our future and our past as we live the moment. That is where evolution lies in man. That's our next step. And it's quite exciting to, begin to get glimpses of how that all works.
Fascinating. This is great. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show with us. And I once again recommend our listeners go to richardallenmiller.com. Check out the library section. You've got a dozen amazing books and many more on the way. Also go to...
I should mention, I have one other site. I have a Facebook now that has like 30 and 40,000 people each week at docram.com. It also has a bookstore there. They both connect. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we can find you on Facebook. Also, are you on Twitter or any other avenues as well?
Together, I'm still grumpy. I don't have a cell. Well, they're toxic. That's stopping the bees. All these towers and these boot up stations to recharge your cell phone, those kinds of things, are killing our bees.
Not good. I definitely agree.
It's our food chain. Yeah.
Well, okay, man. This has been great, Richard. I certainly look forward to speaking with you next time. And I also want to recommend real quick before we close out tonight that our listeners go to leakproject.com. We have a special promotion right now for folks where if you go to leakproject.com, if you set yourself up a free profile there, we're going to give you access to certain podcasts, downloadable, streamable, ad-free, won't cost you anything. So check that out. And also go to youtube.com/clandestine time lord. We've got a second channel now, the William Wallace YouTube channel. This has been great speaking with all of you guys. Appreciate everybody that's contributed in one way, shape, or form. And be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and we've got a real treat for you today, folks. We have Dr. Richard Allen Miller, author, researcher. Doc Ram reveals a depth of knowledge and experience in alternative agriculture, physics, metaphysics. He began working in the secret world of Navy Intel, SilCorp, and then MRU in the late 60s, and has amazing experiences and conclusions to share. His IQ is literally off the charts. And for those of you that have heard of Timothy Leary, Timothy Leary was absolutely brilliant. And in the 60s, there were alphabet organizations that were experimenting with LSD and people that had really high IQs. Well, Doc Ram took acid with Timothy Leary. And I'll tell you what, just some of the information that Doc Ram brings to the table is mind-blowing. During this presentation, we are going to discuss time travel, how to speak with your future self. How cool is that? What does magic, physics, mystery schools, and alphabet agencies have in common? Zero-point energy. Doc Ram says almost all solar systems are binary, with a black hole in the center that leads to a white hole in another galaxy. He also describes the creation of time, cavitation, and supercavitation in such an eloquent and fluid manner almost anyone can understand, including myself. Now, Dr. Richard Allen Miller then brings up Nibiru and why it is so difficult to pick up with the traditional telescope. It has a unique infrared signature that isn't correct. He also claims that the poles on Earth have shifted and we are living in the hottest times on Earth on record. It reached 164 degrees via heat index in Iran last year. You can look that up. What does NASA and other institutions see on the horizon for Earth in the next couple of years with the geographical changes and severe weather patterns that are happening right now? Wait until you hear the hypothesis Doc Ram has about Nibiru. This might just blow your mind. How about the Rh negative blood factor? Could ETs be hiding in plain sight? Is there a war going on inside each of us at the molecular level? What are our options at physical death? Would you follow the light tunnel or go into the light? What is synchronicity? What is the afterlife? Is magic with a K real, not just stage magic and performers? What is magic? How does one become a true magi? Is magic evil? Or is it the intent of those casting the energetic forces? Hermetics. What is real? What is illusion? His answer might shock you. AI software, Jade Helm 2.0, then 3.0. The singularity, transhumanism. What is API biofeedback? Is Grey Goo real? Now, if you go to richardallenmiller.com, you will see a library of resources and invaluable information. I am currently in the process of putting something together with Doc Ram for Leak Project listeners. When you go to richardallenmiller.com and you purchase one or more of his books, use the code LEAKPROJECT for an additional benefit. Make sure to go to leakproject.com, become a member at Leak Project, and you will get access to exclusive content. We are even offering some of the podcasts ad-free, either streamable or downloadable, absolutely free. All you have to do is sign up at leakproject.com. You can also go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord. You'll get access to the latest podcasts absolutely free. And check out our new YouTube channel, aka William Wallace, for additional podcasts, information, and presentations. Now, I spoke to Jordan Maxwell yesterday from jordanmaxwellshow.com. Make sure to use the accurate website. It's jordanmaxwellshow.com. And we will be releasing an exclusive interview with Mr. Maxwell later today on the William Wallace channel. So make sure to subscribe. We were originally going to speak with Mr. Maxwell Friday the 13th, a couple months ago, and he had a heart attack. How crazy is that? Thankfully, he is back and better than ever. It is rare that Jordan does interviews anymore. With the amount of information he has accumulated over the years, it is just such a blessing that we had the opportunity to speak with him. Now, with that said, this podcast isn't for everyone that we did with Jordan, because he brings some very controversial information to the table that is thousands of years old. He had a close relationship with Zecharia Sitchin, and we also discussed their relationship and what Mr. Sitchin knew about the Anunnaki, Nibiru, and other suppressed information. I hope everybody's having an amazing day. Stay safe and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Enjoy the presentation. Talk to you soon. Hello.
Hi, Rex.
Hey, we got it to work. Fantastic.
Oh yeah, I'm just sending you. It's CenturyLink, and they're on my phone too. But their bandwidth thing is different. Now I just started a major upload. I have an editor that is willing to publish. Not publish, edit the Marshall paper, so I can get that one going in print. It's excellent. It's the work I did with Buckminster Fuller, Iona, my ex-wife and I, on trying to decipher and understand Bob Marshall's mathematics. He was a true idiot savant. Nobody could understand him. However, he was beyond genius in his ability in mathematics that would create newer AIs, that kind of level of writing. He was unbelievable. And this paper book is all his writings and his thoughts of how that all works.
That's awesome. I certainly can't wait to hear about that. And
he's the one that Buckminster Fuller got the vector equilibrium matrix and eventually the carbon concepts of C60 and C90, 120 on buckyballs. And really, the vector equilibrium matrix is a little triangle that in certain situations the center can't exist. And so what it's seen as a gate or portal, like your right and left brain and the future and the past and Nibiru, and it just keeps coming up that way as a cavitation process. That is the newest directions, and Marshall was talking about that 20 years ago.
Okay. And so you just...
I'm sitting here going, what the fuck? It's very cool. Let's see where I am on my Dropbox for a second here.
Sure.
I've got just one more thing to do, and then I have other things, but these are the main texts and so on. Listen, there are 3 actual books within it, because Marshall's book, what we did is we took pictures of all. He never wrote. What he did is print and draw geometry. And he was precision in that, like he was gifted. And he did things like, okay, chapter 3 is on Riemann's challenge in the mathematical community. For more than 100 years, Riemann has challenged the math community to come up with a mathematical expression for recurring primes. Nobody has been able to ever do that. It's never happened. However, Marshall, in one moment, visualized a pyramid, not a pyramid, a round cone with a certain pitch to it, and then the pitch of the numbers as they changed, wrapping around it in a different pitch. You could draw a straight line through primes.
Huh. Wow, fascinating
That was,
stuff.
yeah, he was visual. Do you understand what I've just, yeah, he didn't, he does math, he does matrix, lots of matrix. We took pictures of all his writings, and then we had a series of hedonists, experts, look at it, including Iona and I, when we did our original interpretations to Buckminster Fuller. And then we were the only ones that could even closely understand what he was saying. He was a heroin addict. He lived down in Fort Dick area, and he just died recently. His daughter has the manuscripts, all that. Buckminster Fuller, I mean, this was the bottom line to Buck's math, was Bob Marshall. And so what we've done is we've had Dr. Lenny Time edited by having a whole bunch of people, and I've just sent it off to a military friend of mine that does martial arts over in Australia, and he's going to do his own set of edits on it. And corrected Norm Shaley on scalars and what they are and what they are not. He's a physicist and military like I am, but he works for Australia. Anyway, retired like I am, but I have old friends, that I kept in touch with for 50 years. My handler from 1960, 69, it might be 1970, through 1979. I haven't talked to him since 83. And he's flying in from Cornell. He's 74. He's 2 years older than I am. And he was my handler all these years. And we haven't seen each other since 83, and the unit's been called back up.
Okay.
I can't talk about that. I'm just letting you know what's happening here in the local Grants Pass area. He's flying all the way from Cornell, New York. He was teaching virtual architecture at Cornell. So he's got his own area of expertise.
Now,
I'm the mad scientist one, the one that nobody can figure out what I was going to do or say next, like a 4-year-old.
Awesome.
Well, no, there's an upload error on only one of them. What has happened to the rest of them? They're all good. Upload error. I don't know what that is. Store, 15 kilobytes. Fuck it, who cares? So I'm done there. If you want to try Skype again, it might have increased my bandwidth. Stay tuned on whether or not that's true or not. Yesterday, I did Ocelli Report again, and after 1 year, and it's up on Facebook. And let me say this, that was on time travel and Crowley.
Okay. Do they come hand in hand or what?
Well, they can. It predicates on which way you want to see realities. Now, Paige, where I'm coming from is, I presume you're recording, is that right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, cool. All right, good. The place where I'm coming from is I'm going to suggest that chemistry came out of alchemy while magic will emerge from physics. Now, magic is essentially an advanced form of physics with a mystery school. The mystery school are these areas that cannot be enclosed because it doesn't work that way. Like the moment, if you're in the moment, it has a beginning, a middle part, and an end. And actually, that's all we have right now, like a cavitation ball. And so what I'm trying to do is understand the nature of what happened when the Big Bang occurred, and that has led me to some mathematical proofs. I can offer proofs that what happens at the moment of and the moment after the moment of death. And that's in Merkaba. Physics isn't real, okay? So what I would offer is an illusionary based on this century's leading religion of the world. That's what everybody believes in, physics. And so it's okay. What is real is imagination. That's way more. And that's where physics now becomes more multidimensioned as magic with mystery schools, places or areas that are not knowable yet.
Have you heard of
May not be knowable by any stretch because it doesn't work that way. That is like time. Time is a duration of consciousness. It's the way we organize our memory. And that is confabulated by dreams and the rest of it. So basically, what I'm realizing now is that we are in the moment. And what's happening for me, I have discovered